Pacific Rim 2. I'm not gonna call it Pacific Rim Uprising because it doesn't mean anything. Like, there's no uprising. It's just like a random word that they chose to put into the movie because they didn't want to call it Pacific Rim 2. This film's directed by Steven Esternay, and it's the sequel to the first Pacific Rim, which I loved. In fact, I'm going to probably spend a lot more time talking about Pacific Rim in this video than Pacific Rim 2 because I love that film. I think Pacific Rim is one of my personal favorites. I would say maybe top 25, top 30 of this decade, which is saying a lot. And in fact, it's in my top 3 favorite Guillermo del Toro films. I like it more than The Shape of Water, I'm sorry, but I do. I just really like the first film. And with that film, I think that Guillermo del Toro did such a good job of combining really cool, fun action sequences, but still had a film that was very grounded and had a very gritty look and feel, and a film that actually had some things to say, and a film that had interesting characters who had goals, and relationships were built, and character arcs happened. None of that is in this film. Number 2 I'm talking about, Pacific Rim Uprising, is one of the more disappointing films I've seen. I guess we should just talk about some of the more redeemable qualities that it has. Well, John Boyega is great, and you know, when you get John Boyega in a film, that's kind of what you expect, isn't it? Because John Boyega is an incredibly talented actor, and here he gives a very fun, charismatic performance. It's just a shame that his character is so badly written, and everything you know about him is not through the actions and the things he does, but through what other people said that he used to do. It's not good writing. None of the characters are very well written. The acting's good, but none of the characters are well written. Scott Eastwood here, who normally gets rejected by Hollywood because, you know, he's always in a film and he gets cut out the film. Like, he's in Suicide Squad for 5 minutes. He was meant to be in Live by Night, but then he got cut out. And so it's nice to see Scott Eastwood, a very talented actor, actually get some screen time. But his character, again, doesn't get much to do, but he does give a decent performance. Also, there's this girl that sort of hangs around. She's sort of a Jaeger pilot as well. And I thought that she was probably my favorite performance in the film because that was probably the character that was given the most depth and given the most to do in terms of character growth. So I like that. That was one of the more redeemable qualities of the film. Charlie Day, I thought was fine, but his character was pretty horrible in this film. The direction that they take him in, every YouTube reviewer has said this, it's ridiculous and it makes no sense and it's really stupid. Gorman is back in this film, and I actually liked his character here quite a bit. I thought he gave a very funny performance, unlike Charlie Day, who just kind of, it's not his fault because Charlie Day is a very funny guy, but in this film it didn't work for me. So I would say that the acting is one of the redeemable qualities here, but the characters are certainly horrible. And the action scenes are not as good as the first film. There are a few moments where you're watching it and you're like, the director of this film is probably going for something quite creative and quite fun and quite unique, but it just gets Hollywoodized. This film, whenever it tries to become very creative and very fun and unique, like the first one did, every time that happens, it gets shut down by the Hollywoodness, you know, the very mainstreamness of it all. And it was a shame because I think that Steven Esternay, even though this is his first film, he's mainly worked in TV. I think that he actually wanted to do something quite fun with this film and quite interesting in terms of the fighting, the visuals, the Jaegers, because apparently he's a big fan of this type of robot kaiju films. But I think that as a storyteller and as a guy who, because he wrote the script as well, as someone who needs to work on the characters, I think that there is a lot of work to be done here. But the action scenes are relatively well put together, and in fact I would say they're pretty cool and pretty fun to watch. But if you look at the first film, every fight is sort of unique and stands out from one another, and you know, sometimes in the rain, sometimes underwater, sometimes in these really cool neon lit cities, whereas in this one it's all in broad daylight, and it was a shame. And also you didn't really care about the characters, so there weren't any stakes in the fights, which is a shame again. The cinematography is also alright. It's actually slightly weak, which is kind of a shame, and it's kind of weird because the film here is shot by Dan Mindell, who worked on the Star Wars The Force Awakens, he worked on Star Trek, did a lot of work with J.J. Abrams. But here it didn't work for me, and the editing I thought was very poor. The opening scene, there's this chase scene, it was shit. It was just shit. Pacific Rim 2 was relatively disappointing. I'm not going to speak too much anymore about it because I have better things to do with my life, but yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment. Nowhere near as good as the first one. The plot is also kind of non-existent. There isn't really much of a plot until halfway through the film, and the thing that sort of led to that plot actually kicking off made no sense. There's this sort of thing with like a rogue Jaeger. That didn't make any sense either. It was just an excuse to have Jaegers fight each other, which was cool, but it didn't make sense. The film just kind of falls apart because it doesn't make sense. The actual plot of the film, why the characters do what they do, why the characters are required to do this, why the characters are required to do that. It doesn't make sense. There's no reasoning to it. But yeah, would I recommend you to see this film? Probably not. I mean, if you want to just go and turn your brain off and enjoy robots punching each other and robots punching monsters, then yeah, of course it works on that level. But aside from that, Pacific Rim Uprising is relatively disappointing. Although I do think that the director really wanted to do something really special with this film, it does feel like it was very Hollywoodized. I think the producers of the studio just like, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you have to make a whole cinematic universe or whatever. The ending definitely sort of sets up a third film. I mean, I would like to see a third film, but not that much because the second film was kind of shit. John Boyega is good, right? All the actors are good, but overall this was a pretty disappointing film. I'm gonna give Pacific Rim Uprising a C. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned for my review of The Quiet Place. I have decided to go see that because I'm going to grow a pair of balls and sit through a horror film. Also, I have a video essay coming out soon. I have a 2 video essay coming out soon, actually, so be sure to stay tuned for that, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.